July 28th, 1940. On the Channel Islands, one of the first commando raids of the Second World War have ended in typically farcical fashion. The image of commandos of the Second World War nowadays is some Hollywood film or otherwise with chaps with black painted faces and black clothing and doing daring do and sneaking in and blowing stuff up, kidnapping people and all the rest of it. And almost from the moment the Channel Islands went under, Churchill said, well, let's do something. I think there was a half-baked idea that they could get one of the islands back or liberate them, but then, like Mountbatten's idea that they could take Alderney and hold on to it, I'm not sure. Even Jersey and Guernsey possessed enough military forces to make life hell, I would have thought, on Alderney. And Alderney is, I think, of the main islands, the one closest to France, or France was occupied. So I don't know what Mountbatten was thinking. Probably not very much what I read of Mountbatten. So I have to check on the old Channel Island website, but Martel and Mulholland had landed. There was another raid that managed to get away, but they had forgotten, they left the boat somewhere, somebody couldn't swim, the locals seen them and stuff like that. I think there was literally a case of one of these commandos, maybe one of Martel and Mulholland, who went into their family home or something, and the uncle was comes downstairs and goes, "All right, chum, I thought you were in the army," and he goes, "I am." and I was just like, oh, we can laugh because they didn't get killed. I wouldn't have made a joke if they had paid the ultimate penalty. Ultimately, they spent the rest of the war at Hitler's leisure, you might say. And they were lucky because after a while, commandos, not just those that landed on the Channel Islands, but I would have thought Channel ports and anywhere else commandos were employed, would be effectively shot on sight, if not executed out of hand for being commandos. Gradually, commando raids, as far as the Channel Islands went, became professional, should we say, in comparison. And there was one, I can't remember when it was now, and I think it was on Alderney or Guernsey, that there was a theory that there was a rumour that they had handcuffed or certainly sort of bound the German prisoners' hands together and left them or something, and Hitler got pissed and said, right, I want X amount of prisoners. I think he did Canadian prisoners, and then Canada did it. And it just, for islands now, with respect to those that live there, and I've always wanted to see the Channel Islands, by the way, so I'm not, I've got no, but for islands that technically were quite insignificant before the war and during it, I mean, Hitler got obsessed with them and decided to make them part of the Atlantic War. A lot of energy was spent on them, again, the Atlantic War, and they did command certain focuses, and they did change a lot of people's lives. If you read The Model Occupation by Madeline Bunting, and I'm sure any other book that's come out since that book in the mid-90s about the occupation, there are people from the wilds of Russia, deepest, darkest Siberia, say, who were brought to the Channel Islands, which I would have thought to a Russian, they probably never even heard of the bloody Channel Islands, and they've been dragged all the way through Europe. I assume after 41 they've been taken prisoner, and they end up on Alderney, which apparently was next level to hell in terms of the treatment of prisoners, not just Russians. And that's changed their life. And then there were those Channel Islanders who were sent to the mainland, and some of them that ended up in concentration camps. And like I've mentioned before, that heroic lady, Louisa Gold, who ended up dying in the gas chamber out of Athens' book. So these islands made their difference in their way. Hitler, would he have been so obsessed with them had Britain gone under? Probably not, but as long as he had British territory, he was rather mad about them. The generals called them island madness. I forget what the German is for it. Is Exile something or other. But the islands were meant to be a stepping off point, really, for the invasion of Britain. I mean, I doubt they would have played a part in the invasion of Britain had Operation Sealion, say, started. But they were meant to be a stepping off point in the sense of what Britain could expect. German Navy High Command in the last week of July has been saying, it starts saying to Hitler, effectively in the shape of Gross Admiral Erich Raeder, that we won't be ready. We can't be ready any time in the time frame you want. I think we should postpone to the spring. Hitler says, well, Hitler and the High Command are going, well, we're going to go by mid-September, and then at some point in the last week of July, it changes to have, changes that Hitler says, well, we should go after Russia, and Hitler apparently postponed the invasion of Russia to the spring of 1941, which suggests that he was vaguely thinking about it in the winter of 40. For somebody who claimed to be a legend on the battlefield and a coward at sea, I forget what the exact quote is, I think it's on land I am a hero, at sea I am a coward. Hitler didn't really either want to think things through or thought he knew better, and I guess he thought better in his mind. Like you read most histories, like I was reading about Sebag Montefiore's Dunkirk book, the seminal book on Dunkirk, I might add, and Hitler, they cancelled the invasion of the West several times in the autumn and winter of 1939. And indeed in the spring of 1940 till when they eventually did, May the 10th. It's tempting, alternate history, to theorise about such things. You know, if you say Hitler had invaded France and the Low Countries and whatever in, I don't know, early November 1939, would he have had the same result as he did a few months later? Debatable, but then the generals were saying that the winter and the autumn were going to make things rather difficult. We're going to get bogged down. And look at what happened in Russia when the thaws and whatnot changed. Yeah, there's an episode of World at War that shows all the jeeps and their tanks trying, and the mud is worse than anything. Like it's like Passchendaele by 100 times over. So I still would have thought, being the end of July 1940, that Hitler's intention is still to defeat the British one way or the other. He says in the last week of July to the High Command, like Yodel and whatnot, that we'll defeat Russia first and then effectively Britain will see our way of things. Now, again, it's debatable, isn't it? Let's say he had invaded Russia in May 1941 as originally intended and made all the gains that he did that in 1941. But with the added measure that because he's had that extra month, he gets into the suburbs of Moscow. He captures Moscow, catches Stalin maybe, or at least drives some of the Soviet government east. And he's, by the time the winter sets in, he has effectively defeated Russia. Would he then, in the spring of 1942, say, right, Mr. Churchill, let's make peace, or would he go after them? I mean, I wrote a story that I've drafted endless times since I was at school when I first tried writing it, and I'm not going to be rewriting it anytime soon because I started the current draft, the 7th in 2015, and only finished it in 2018. It was a beast, like Churchill said, I can get rid of. But I theorise that, you know, the changing point is Malta. He takes Malta, Russia falls by 43, 44, and Hitler says, well, I've had enough of Britain, we're going to go after it, and he invades it in 45. I won't go into that story, but America was coming into the war, say, at the end of 1941, but American material and manpower really didn't start to turn up until early 42, a couple months, you know, it didn't turn up overnight. So Hitler, if he wanted to deal with Britain, could realistically have sort of taken on the country in spring 42, bombed the living shit out of Fire Command again, having brought aircraft back from the east, landed, but then by 42 the British Army is in better shape than it was. So it's all hearsay. I don't think if Hitler had defeated Russia and say had everything from the English Channel to the Urals, Churchill was still going to Churchill was only going to hold his hands up and go, "Oh shit, I don't think we've got a chance, lads." If anything, America, I guess, would come over, and then so. But Hitler, I think, make it. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. As a student at uni, I was told, as I think I've said before, do not use hindsight. But Hitler made a bloody mistake not finishing Britain off in any capacity in 1940. Even if he wasn't invading, he could realistically have kept bombing Fighter Command into oblivion and then going after the cities, or maybe somehow doing both at the same time. Instead of on September 7th, because of the retaliatory raids against Berlin, for what was an accident by the Luftwaffe, going after the cities. It gave Fire Command time to lick their wounds and come back at the enemy. And it meant that the fighter escort for these bombers could only spend very little time over Britain before their fuel became precarious. So I think they could manage 20 minutes. You know, saying right, that's it, and just leaving the Blitz as the only action against Britain. Britain was still there as he was going into Russia, as he declared war on America. Britain becomes that sort of launch pad for the second front, eventually. Between 42 and 44, these men and material turn up in Britain. Britain's effectively at a state of the United States, as Bob Hope, I think, once joked it at the time. And then they invade Europe. You know, there's always these jokes that, oh, you know, the Yanks turned up late, or, well, we won the war. Well, yes, America and Russia won the war. Russia in terms of a sheer bloody-mindedness as to how much blood it was going to spill of its own. The Americans for manpower, money, and force. But had this country, Britain, not held out, there would have been nothing for these Americans to come over and win the war for us. And I think people, you know, tend to forget that. It's not a driving point in everyday life, but it sort of is a little bit irritating when you have people say it to you in all due seriousness, that they won the war, and it's like, well, hang on a minute, who was the country that and no acknowledgement of the fact that this country held out for almost 2 years. Virtually alone, but technically had the empire to help it out. Had we rolled under in the autumn of 1940, had Hitler finished the job quite thoroughly? No, America would not have won the war, not the European war, anyway. They were sure so weren't going to be coming to liberate Britain, I would have thought. But of course that didn't happen. Or did it? I believe in parallel realities, because there's got to be a better life somewhere for me that I've done. As Captain Kirk said, I've turned left instead of right. So that's your nonsense on the last week of July 1940, the invasion threat and the future.